Health and Human Services, Health Insurance Reform, Economic Development, and Senior Citizens now convenes this oversight hearing. Public hearing notices were given to the media. First notice on Wednesday, September 10th, and second notice on Friday, September 12th. For the record, today is Thursday, September 18th, and the time now is 12:38 p.m. I'd like to recognize the presence of our Vice Chairman, Senator Toniata. Thank you. Speaker Wanpat, Vice Speaker Cruz, Senator Yamashita, and Senator Chris Duenas. Thank you very much for joining us this afternoon, and thank you all for being here. Before we start, can we have the Sergeant at Arms swear? I think the room, in case we do need anyone else to appear before the committee. Okay, Sergeant at Arms. Thank you very much. Thank you again to the Guam Memorial Hospital management and staff who are here this afternoon. We called this hearing as part of the committee's ongoing effort to keep the legislature and the public, general public, aware of what's happening in the hospital. And so we sent a letter to the hospital seeking 3 items. And so we'll try to get through that this afternoon. We know we have another hearing dealing with the hospital right after this, so we'll try to get over this as soon as we can. But the primary interest of the committee was the status of general operations of GMH, inclusive of the skilled nursing unit, the status of GMHA Finances to include accounts payable, and a report on capital improvement projects, inclusive of establishment of legislative mandated urgent care center. And so I know you probably have a presentation to.
Sure.
Okay. Mr. Verga.
Good afternoon, Senators, distinguished Senators. Thank you very much for inviting us here today, and I appreciate the opportunity to discuss clinical fiscal operations at GMH, our only hospital. Mr. Ulrich, members of the hospital's management, medical staff, and I are here to answer your questions and talk about the positive direction and the many positive initiatives and progress at GMH. On September 15th, Governor Calvo received a draft copy of the long-awaited Department of Interior Office of Inspector General report. The OIG states that the draft document is exempt from disclosure to the public under FOIA at this time because it's in draft form. Nonetheless, there are several comments that should be stated to the legislature and to the public, and I wanted to highlight those, and I look forward to having the entire report be made public. The report highlights and recommends full implementation of many of the positive initiatives and progress at GMH and commends the hospital leadership for its development of a strategic plan to help guide its improvements. Things are looking up and moving in the right direction and moving forward at GMH. Before I answer your questions, I also want to thank you for your ongoing support of GMH as you negotiated the fiscal 2015 budget and other initiatives to help the hospital. I also want to thank Governor Calvo, his Adelup team, DOA, BBMR, Public Health for their assistance in addressing the hospital's capital and operating needs. I have previously mentioned the audit report by the OIG, Department of Interior, and some other additional comments that were noteworthy in the report that, as I said, I'm looking forward to you seeing, are commending the ongoing efforts of the hospital administration and recommending full implementation of many of the initiatives that we have talked about and will continue to talk about to help move GMH forward. The report makes many recommendations that mirror or support the actual improvements that are in place. And as I said, I look forward to the report actually being made public very soon. I also thank and look forward to working with the governor, this legislature, and everyone committed to the success of GMH moving forward. So thank you very much for your time this afternoon. And we're here to answer your questions, Senators.
Great. Thank you very much, Mr. Verga. Mr. Verga, you may or may not have seen the news report last night. One of the news organizations had presented copies of purchase orders from the hospital, which just by looking at it, may seem that there's some irregularities there, because for one specific company, there are 2 purchase orders that are under just a few $100s under the $15,000 threshold. And so I believe you're aware of this. The media had presented it to you as well.
No, that's not true. I haven't seen the document, Senator.
Okay. So there are two purchase orders. I believe it's for HRG Group, which was for $14,400, I believe, and the other one was something similar. And so, the question was posed to me, and so, I'm not in operation. So that's something that I think raises concerns, because if it is a circumvention of the procurement law, then that's something that we must address. But if you can share that with us, with this committee now and the public, we appreciate it.
Well, Senator, I thank you for that. I really don't know what documents you're referring to, because I haven't seen them. I will tell you that GMH follows procurement law at all times. I really have to express concern, because I don't know how the news media obtained these documents. They weren't obtained through regular FOIA channels. I don't know if they're authentic, if they've been altered. I mean, I don't know where they came from.
Okay, so I guess,
quite frankly, I haven't seen them,
and
so I can't really comment specifically about these documents.
Is there I think there's three purchase orders. Maybe the CFO can answer on this, on HRG, a human resource group. I don't know if you can state what HRG stands for, and if there are three purchase orders, two of them for about $14,000, one right after the other, a purchase order, a PO, a number that's one right after the other.
But Senator, excuse me, but I think we need time to really look and investigate what you're talking about, because, as I said, I don't know how these documents were obtained.
Mr. Chairman, maybe we can go back just a little further. Has HRG, since you're the CEO,
Yes?
done any work for the hospital?
Yes.
Under what authority, and how were they compensated?
HRG has a contract with the hospital that's been approved by the Board of Trustees of the hospital to do temporary staffing. And Alan, if you want to elaborate some more,
And
to
how
help
much
us
was
catch
that?
up on billing.
How much was that contract for?
I don't have it at my fingertips, Senator. I don't have the exact amount of that specific contract at my fingertips.
Mr. Ulrich,
Yes,
how much was the contract to HRG?
I cannot answer that because I don't have that information at my fingertips.
Okay.
Of the last 2 years, probably the most important contract that you guys are putting on right now is this HRG contract. Maybe, all right, no, let's go back. What is this contract for?
You want to
The
explain that?
contract, which was approved by the board at their February meeting, was to provide interim Medicare acute care billing for the hospital. We do not have the resources, and it was provided initially to allow the billing staff at the hospital to focus on the upcoming transition to NTT's Optimum system. So we secured through the board a resolution to obtain interim billers that are specifically skilled in hospital inpatient billing for Medicare only.
And this Medicare issue and this Medicare billing issue is probably one of the most elusive and difficult issues that the two of you have had to face since you've taken management of the hospital. Is that correct?
Actually, it's one of many initiatives dealing with the billing of the claims from the hospital. But certainly, Medicare is very complex, following certain rules, and we do not have the expertise in-house. And in order to provide Ms. Camacho, who is doing the Medicare billing and is also stepping in as a management role in the business office, to allow her to help coordinate the transition to NTT, we said we will supplement your billing expertise by bringing in contracted people who know how to bill hospital claims to Medicare. The other thing that we
Please
did
understand that I commend that you finally did it. All right?
Thank you.
I think all we're asking is, as important as this contract was and is to the hospital and the billing practice at the hospital, how much was it and how was it paid for?
I can't tell you the global dollars. I will tell you that the fee that we are paying, I believe, speaking from memory, is $40 an hour for their billing, and they're working 40 hours a week on behalf of the hospital. Now, I want to just add, Medicare billing is equally as important as billing public health for Medicaid MIP and also the commercial insurance carriers. But because we do not have billing expertise for Medicare, we secured their consulting services. The other thing that's important to understand is that Noridian, the Medicare intermediary, stops. We cannot access them after noon, 12 o'clock noon here in Guam, because of their system going down at night. By using contracted consultants, they are available to access Medicare all day when they're working on behalf of GMH.
You know all those facts, and I'm just saying, as important as this contract is, it may not be the most important one, but as important as this contract is, and again, I commend you for finally doing it. I've been asking when we were going to do this since both of you came on.
There are actually two components, really.
So the chairman is only asking, how much was it, and how was it paid? $40 an hour, paid how, and was there an RFP? When was the RFP issued? What's the RFP number? And when was that approved? Was it for an amount over $15,000 requiring an RFP? Or did we circumvent the RFP process by doing 2 purchase orders or 3 purchase orders for less than $15,000?
Well, Vice Speaker Cruz, I will take issue right at the front by you even assuming or stating that, in fact, we're trying to circumvent procurement rules and regs. Mr. Verga and I are circumspect in making sure that we follow procurement rules and regs as dictated by the government of Guam. Now,
if we are able to produce those documents, would I have your resignation by the end of the day?
Let me answer your question. We have had, as you know, over the course of the last year, several attempts, aborted attempts, if you will, to convert to NTT's optimum system. Now, the reason that we initially secured the contract with HRG Pros was to provide services at the hospital on site. And what we have done is that we initially set it up for, I believe, 2 months and 1 month. And that was to take us up to the actual conversion date as defined by NTT. Now, the amount of the cost of the contract and their travel was whatever number it was. Now, we delayed, or NTT delayed, the conversion of the optimum system. And because of that, we have extended the PO to allow the Medicare billing to go forward. And there was not an RFP because there was no intent. It was only supposed to be for 2 months at the maximum. So I will steadfastly refute any innuendo from you that would state that RFP process was circumvented, because that was not the intent.
You have in front of you 2 machines. Are those hospital computers?
This is provided by a member of your staff. This is my personal computer, yes.
And on your personal computer, you have hospital documentation, correct?
Yes, I do.
So you would be able to, while we're having this hearing, pull up the HRG file, won't you?
No, I would not. This is hospital data that I have transferred via flash drive from the hospital's computer systems to here specifically for work that I do at home or for this presentation. I do not have access through here because I don't have a Wi-Fi through here to access the hospital system, so I don't have that information or that data.
If we were to get you the Wi-Fi access number, could you access the hospital computer system so you can pull that up? Or can you have one of your dozens of staff here call the hospital, get us a copy of it? So that
I'm sure we could.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd ask that you do.
And may I speak, Mr. Chairman, with all due respect? I mean, we're speaking blindly without any documents in front of us. You know, we've been told that there's been documents we haven't seen. And as I told you, my concern, we'd be happy to look into this and answer any questions you have. We certainly never are intent to circumvent any, and we haven't, to our knowledge, circumvented any procurement process. This HRG contract, there were 2 phases to this. This was an interim contract. to help us with temporary staffing. And Senator, to my recollection, I believe we discussed this and disclosed this at the last hearing. So this is not something new.
Yeah, I think, Joe, the issue is not the purpose of the contract. I think that was stated already, that this is something that the hospital needs to do, the hospital needs to do. But what was presented to the public and the committee was that, there's these two purchase orders, one right after the other, that have this amount, on it. And so that question is there. And so if we can get that, we'll go ahead and move on here. But that is something that is a question that needs to be answered. And I know that you're going to go and start to get that. And if we can get it while we're having the hearing, then good. If not, then we'll come back if we have to.
I believe we're going to need some time to look into it, Senator, and we would ask for some time and not be blindsided like this in the hearing.
No, I don't think it's a blindsiding, Joe.
Well, it kind of is.
Because the media had called both of us at the same time.
I know, but I still haven't seen these documents, Senator, and I don't know what they're talking about. And I told you my concern was I don't know if they're falsified. I don't know if they're authentic. I don't know if they've been altered. We need time to look into it. So I don't believe we're asking anything that's inappropriate for some time to look into, and we'd be happy to report back to you.
And I've said I'll give you that time.
All the circumstances surrounding this contract.
So we'll give you that time, but understand that this issue here is of great public importance. Now that we're here, we've been everyone. You've mentioned the governor's office. This legislature has been doing what we could, doing our best to support and provide the hospital what it needs. But the hospital as well has to be accountable, and when things like this arise, these things need to be addressed. And so that's the issue here. So we'll go ahead and move on. Okay. In the last hearing, you had you've indicated that the billing and collection is going to be days or weeks. In days or weeks, you will have something signed. So can you report back to us on that?
Alan has a slide which will show the status of all the RFPs and what they relate to.
Okay.
Thank you. Let me just answer verbally, and then while I pull up the slide. We have several RFPs and contracts. First of all, the contract with Craneware, which is for a charge master review, was signed earlier this week by the governor, and we are in the process. I have a phone call tomorrow to. I'm not worried. I'm just taking care of it, sir. We are in the process of initialing that review for charge master, looking at what we're charging the services and supplies to make sure that's accurate. Relative to the collection agency, and I do want to mention, because I know, Vice Speaker, you mentioned this at the last hearing, that this process started X years ago. I started the process for a collection agency in February of 2013, shortly after starting. And the contract is with the governor's office for signature. It's taken 17 months in order to get from a concept through the RFP process to have a contract to be signed. I talked to the owner of the collection agency this morning, and I talked to him about two things. One is the status of the contract, and I had previously discussed the startup of the contract and the work. The second part is how can we use that collection agency's expertise to help train GMH's employees, both in the business office and in the registration, to enhance their collection efforts as they work with the patients. But that contract is right now in Adelup for signature.
What date did it get there? What date did it get there to Adelup?
I believe it was, I'm not sure I was gone until Sunday. I believe it went either Friday or early this week, Vice Speaker. The third RFP that we have out there was with coding and the revenue cycle, the billing, collection of accounts receivable for everything that's non-self-pay. And we have received quotations for that. I'm in the process of negotiating the contract with that vendor right now. I had conversations 2 days ago and negotiations with them 2 days ago. A copy of the contract was sent to our legal counsel 3 days ago, and so that is in process. So we are hoping to complete that contract from a negotiation and from a compliance with Guam law relative to contracts by next week. Now, when we talk about the conversion, which is another effort that we've talked about previously, we have the optimum conversion with NTD has been delayed from June 30th to August, and now it'll be October 18th, which is for the revenue cycle. As we negotiate this contract with the vendor, we have talked about them implementing or taking over the coding and the billing and the accounts receivable as of November 1st. But once again, all of that is dependent on finalizing the contract and obtaining the approvals that led the required signers of the contract.
So, Alan, when you say take over the billing and the coding, that sounds like the business office, right?
Well, coding is actually in the health information management or the medical records. One of the concerns that we had when we started this process, and this process started last October, in fact, to start the RFP, the conceptualization and the start of the RFP last October. So here we are almost a year later, negotiating a contract. The problem that we had was that our coders are not certified. Now we have proceeded with education to our coders. We have had conversations with you previously about getting our coders certified, but certainly the U.S. healthcare system was going to be upgrading to what's called the ICD-10 system. It was supposed to have been in January of this year, but it's moved back now to 2015. Nonetheless, we don't have the expertise, so that was one of the driving forces for outsourcing coding. But the coding, the benefits of using outside vendor are twofold. One, they have certified coders. Two, they have electronics capability for submitting claims, cleaning claims before they go out, etc., and then managing accounts receivable. In fact, the last week of August, we invited the vendor to visit Guam at their expense, and we had conversations with all 4 major insurance companies, plus public health, to discuss what we want to do relative to electronic interfaces between GMH and the insurance companies. Once again, we're doing 15% electronic claims right now. We should be 95% electronic. We don't have that capability. Even with NTT's Optimum system, we don't have that capability, or it would take time to go from here to here. So that's why we are looking at outsourcing, plus to get a better management of our accounts receivable. From conversations with the vendor and also through the RFP process, they can point to references that show that their collections will increase 10 to 50%. And certainly one of the concerns that you have for the hospital has been how well are we collecting from our insurance companies, whether it's on island or off island. How well are we negotiating or following up on collections? And that's something that we're outsourcing to that company. Thank you.
Alan, why don't you pull up the chart that shows, if you could access it, there are several RFPs, and it gives you the exact status of all of them, where they are. All of these RFPs went through the procurement process, went through the RFP process. Everything is well documented.
So, but the billing, is that, so the billing and collection, that's what you're negotiating now? Is that what it is?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so is it with, so that's a separate RFP?
Yes.
That's being negotiated now. Are you able to say what, is it the same company that you're working with?
We're still in negotiations, so I really can't disclose at the current time.
Okay.
But once we have the actual company, then
Sure.
then we can disclose
Okay.
it. But Alan has, I hope he could pull up this slide. There it is.
So these are the RFPs that we have done over the last 2 years. And as I said, it's a long process to go through the procurement process here in Guam, from conceiving the idea to actually actualizing it. So we have the collection agency. It's signed by everyone up to Adelup. The charge master has been signed, completed. Coding and revenue, we're negotiating. The parking has been negotiating. Laboratory and pathology services, we are awaiting the bids that was just recently extended. The blood products has been closed bids at this time. We did have a RFP for copiers, printers, and fax that had been first executed back in 2012, and we have recently released that again this year, and that's being disputed right now. And we also have, as we talked about, the RFP for architectural and engineering related to labor and delivery. That first review of the bids was a couple days ago.
Mind you, this is not an all-inclusive list. This was just some of the more pertinent ones that I thought that you would all be interested in.
Okay, so with the coding and revenue cycle, the ones that have to deal with the business office related matters, when do you anticipate? I know you're in the negotiating process, but when do you anticipate this to be completed?
Thank you. Every contract is different. I know that working with legal counsel for the crane work contract for Chargemaster, I think it took 3 weeks, 4 weeks to go back and forth between lawyers and entities in order to finalize that contract. That being said, I have not reviewed the feedback or the revised comments from our counsel, but I will be negotiating that and discussing that on Friday. But, once again, how long it gets, then I will be presented to Mr. Verga as a procurement officer for GMH, and then it goes through the various approval processes. But once again, we have to just get the legal ease to match or meet Guam procurement rules, and then we have to finalize the negotiation of terms.
Sure, okay. I know it's not an RFP, but it's a contract, the third-party payer agreement. What's the status? Last hearing, August 1st was the deadline, was the timeline that you guys set out. Has that been signed, or is that still ongoing as well?
That's ongoing. I have presented a 28-page contract to the 4 insurance companies on island. One of the most complex parts of the transaction is the pricing. As you know, right now we're on a discounted fee basis with the local insurance companies, and we are structuring that contract to go to a per diem, a fixed amount for every day, whether they're in the ICU or in the medical or whatever department they're at. The second part of the contract is the most complex part, and this comes back to matters that are going to be presented to the legislature. Now, that being the fee increase. As you know, we had proposed in September of 2013 a fee increase for the 8,000 line items at the hospital, a blended increase of 60%. We submitted that to Speaker Juan Pat, I believe, at the end of March, and then we withdrew that based on what we were receiving as far as comments or concerns. And Joe, do you want to comment on that? But nonetheless, as we go into the contracting with the insurance companies, it's very difficult to say, well, I'm going to negotiate this fee now, and if my fee increase that will be presented again to the legislature is this, how do I negotiate the correct fees? And that's where we are right now. They have the contracts. We've discussed electronic billing and remittances, and we are now working on structuring the fees for the outpatient, which includes outpatient services and the emergency department.
We are negotiating separately with all the insurers. And each one of them use unique needs, unique volumes. Each one of them has a draft contract in front of them as we speak. We also, as you know, last time talked about moving towards a kind of a capitated all-inclusive rate, which the insurers prefer, and so do we. Of course, trying to arrive at that number, which is going to be to the hospital's benefit and to everyone's benefit. That's the negotiation. Once we arrive at the fees, and we think we're very close, we know where we want to be, then we'll be submitting the fees to the legislature, because we didn't want to submit something to you and then have to come back to you again and then do it. So, and Senator, you and I had talked about the last time putting this off for a lot of different reasons, and that was one of them.
So are you saying that the fee schedule must come first before a finalization of the contract?
That's a complex question, because yes, we want, and part of this will also come through our work with Craneware. Through our information from them, we will have access to comparable fees at other hospitals, whether it's in the Pacific, like Hawaii, or on the mainland. But we want to make sure our fees are appropriate, based on the original law that allowed the methodology for establishing GMH's fees. And then, so coming back to the negotiation, we will be defining what our fees are, and then we will be negotiating that, and then concurrently presenting that to the speaker for presentation to the legislature.
Okay.
Thank you.
So okay, thank you. So moving on to the status of the finances. What is the status now? And if you can tell us, I know the last time we were here, we talked about the reconciliation between public health and the hospital. Talk to us about that. What's the status if that has been completed as well?
Well, I'll start and then I'll continue. The process is ongoing and has not been completed. We just had another meeting as recently as this morning with DOA, and the meetings have been ongoing to reconcile between BBMR, DOA, and us, and public health. And we're finding some gaps and discrepancies, and so we have been established closer lines of communications and regular forums and regular meetings now. So we think that in a very short space of time, this will certainly yield not only present results, but going future, we will avoid this type of thing in going forward.
To follow up to what Joe said, yes, we are having conversations with the governor. They've been very receptive to talking to us about the finances that are available to the hospital, whether it's through public health or for other appropriations. Relative to public health, because your question focused specifically on public health, there are two different initiatives that were going on. There's a interface that any provider, like a hospital, should be able to have with an insurance company. It's called a 276-277 interface, 276/277 interface. If I go to the emergency room or the hospital has my claim from the emergency room, we should be able to submit my claim to the insurance company, and they can tell me what the status is. Has it been reviewed? Has it been rejected? Has it been paid? All that information. Now, we don't have that capability with any of the insurance companies on island. And that's one reason we're going computerized, because we need to have better management of the claims. That being said, since June, my first email was to Mr. Gillen and Ms. Archangel in June, requesting information for allowing that interface, that 276-277 interface. Even as of 3 o'clock this morning, when I received my last email concerning it, the consultants from public health, IT consultants, and our consultant have not been able to eliminate the errors. I have sent our consultant a list of 65,000 claims that we have submitted to public health to find out what they have done with those 65,000 claims. This is going back to 2012. Until we get that interface, we cannot reconcile it. And as we pointed out in a meeting that we had last fall, GMH has never reconciled claims, our claims, with what public health has in its system. And I know that while I was absent, there was some conversations and comments as to whether all the claims have been processed, et cetera, and what the status is. So it's very important for us to reconcile that with public health. So the first initiative is this 276-277 interface, which is 3 months of IT people talking to IT, and it still hasn't happened. Frustrates me. That should not be that difficult, but I'm not technical either. The second part is that the finance staff is working on reconciling, looking at actual claims and receivable data to try and follow up and see what claims haven't been paid and what the status is, and that's an ongoing analysis that's going on right now. But nonetheless, as you know, if you look at our financials, we have $24 million due from public health. And they say they're up to date, they paid everything. That's a big gap. And one of my major issues is to find out what is the status of the 65,000 claims, to find out were they paid, and we didn't manage it, we didn't record it, we didn't do contractuals, they haven't paid this, they haven't paid that for whatever reason. So that's an important concept we're working on. Thank you.
The electronic interface notwithstanding, Senator, we still are proceeding with the manual reconciliation, of course, which is painfully slow, doing this manually. We have started, we are doing reconciling manually, but of course, if we can get this electronic interface established that we've been trying to work on with them for some time, this would really solve the problem. But we'll continue to do it manually. But again, you can put lots of manpower on it. You could spend lots of money in terms of your return on investment, how much you're going to get back. We're doing what we can manually to get the bills into this, to have public health get the bills into the system, and this is part of the problem.
And let me just add one.
That $25 million that you're bandying about today, that public health owes you, is that pre-reconciliation, or is that post-reconciliation and down at DOA?
That is pre-reconciliation. And so it is pre-reconciliation, and it is also pre-contractual. If you remember that we're being paid on a per diem for all of our inpatients, and I might bill $5,000, but I only get $1,100 back from public health. So the 24 million represents gross pre-contractuals.
And from your experience, the last $25 million that you billed to public health and social services, what percentage of that $25 million was reconciled and paid by DOA? Accepted by public health and social services, approved by public health and social services, transmitted to DOA for payment and paid to you. What percentage?
I don't have that information, Vice Speaker. I don't know. I mean, we are working on, we transmit.
Do you get
claims
100% of the amount that you bill to them?
No.
Do you get 80% of what you bill to them?
It's not as simple as that. Let me mention just, okay, right now.
I understand, Mr. Ulrich, it's not as, I'm just saying, you've been there 17 months now. Maybe, no, actually, it's almost 20 months, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in those 20 months, when you've sent $25 million worth of billing to public health and social services, in your experience, short as it may be, what has been the return?
Well, that's a complex question, Vice Speaker. One, we are submitting $4 million a month, more or less, to public health in claims. We're submitting it electronically, and we're having to submit it to paper. Now, public health is processing just the paper. And so I have no clue as to how many dollars are processed in the claims, and that's part of the reconciliation. Let me answer
because
your question,
I'm looking at the OPA's summary for this last year. The 1 year that the two of you were both at the helm of the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
Can't blame you for 12, but I can say that you guys were in charge since August of 2012, so it would be FY13, right? Both of you. And during FY13, commendable, you've kept the net operating expenditure of the hospital almost equal to the previous year. In 2012, net operating for the hospital was $103 million. In 2012, the net operating revenue was $85 million. That was before you guys came on board. You guys came on board, you kept the expenditures about the same, $103,638,000, up $200,000, minuscule. But your net operating revenue went from $85 million to $69 million, a 20% decrease. What do you attribute that to?
What year was that? 2013, are you saying, or 2014?
2013, if you read the OPA report about your hospital.
I did read the report, Vice Speaker. I think that it's very difficult for you to understand the aging of receivables and the submission of claims and when they're paid. That information, first of all, you have to remember that also public health runs out of money.
I'm asking. No, I understand.
Finish, but let me just comment. It's really difficult to say that if I submit $100 of claims, that I'm going to receive the contractual net amount afterwards.
And I'm asking, what was the difference? Your operating expenditures were about equal for both years.
Well, first of all, in the fall of 2012, I believe there was a significant increase of the first-time income tax refund. So that was $12 million in the fourth quarter of 2012. So, I mean, once again, the cash flow
and the administration that brought you in gloats about the fact that over this last year, 113 million has been paid out in taxes. So what? Where is it in here that what caused the $17 million drop between 85 and 69?
So I would have to look at that.
Well, Senator, if I also may add, that was the year we were in a severe fiscal crisis, and our Medicare money was garnished, if you will recall. So there were several things that were happening that year. But, Senator, I really don't see how going back like this and reviewing the past is going to help us going forward. I'd really like to talk about what we're doing now and what we're doing now to improve GMH. And that's what I'm
instead
of
of
rehashing the past.
No, I'm trying to get to that because since the first day that you came on, in fact, the first day that you came on, a letter went to you saying that I had sent a letter to Mr. Vega, who was your predecessor, where I detailed the entire thing about this NTT and advised you. It was the first letter you received.
And you commended me for a response with refreshing candor, if I recall.
Yes.
To quote your words.
Yeah, and I'm just saying, that was 2 years ago. What has happened, and why has it taken so long? Why are we now just sending to Adelup a contract for billing that took you a year, but it's been in the making at the hospital since February of 2011?
Senator, that's not true that it's been in the works since 2011 because the prior RFP for this billing and collections, we totally had to throw out. It was totally inadequate. It didn't address all the complexities involved in the hospital. And as I've always said, the hospital is a very complex environment. There were many, many variables that we had to consider in putting this all together. So we basically started from scratch.
So
we didn't have any tools.
You haven't had a billing company since 2011.
We haven't had a billing company in my time here. We have had to start from scratch. So that's where we now are at the point of we are negotiating finally with the company after going through the RFP process. And there were only 2 responders. By the way, none of them were from on island. So I want to mention that.
Could that possibly have been part of the problem of the reduced revenues?
I'm sorry?
Could that be one of the causes of the 20% reduced revenue?
There are a lot of reasons why there was. As I mentioned, one of them, our Medicare money was garnished that year, and there were several other difficulties.
How much was garnished by Medicare?
Oh, I don't have the specific figures at my
You're the one that's saying it was about $5 million.
At least 5.
Yes.
Actually, I think.
And how are we getting to a $16 million deficit?
But again, I don't see where we're going with this conversation, Senator. How are we going to help GMH going forward? Why are we reliving this past? I don't understand what difference this is going to make to GMH in the future.
I think
I really have to ask the question.
To show the incompetence, to determine whether or not you should continue.
Oh, I understand. So I understand where you're going with this now. Okay.
I don't think it's a question of incompetence, Vice Speaker. It is a very complex issue that requires both electronic billing, follow-up, and also reconciliation. And we have not done that, and that's why we're looking at outsourcing it. Because we don't have all the resources, the sophistication, first of all, within GMH. And second of all, we need to do more on multiple fronts. But reconciliation with insurance,
Alan, I mentioned that to you a long time ago, that you needed to get that expertise.
And
maybe it's not incompetence,
Speaker,
maybe it's just ineptitude.
And I started this in October, and now it is 11 months later, and we're negotiating a contract. It takes time, and we're there. We're almost there. Now, the question is that do we have enough staffing? No, we did not have enough staffing, and my decision was my decision that we didn't bring in additional staffing knowing that we were going to be outsourcing it. So we now have 4 temporary staff people working to help with the billing, but it's under the standing, once again, it's temporary, that once we do get sophistication and we do have the electronics and the capabilities in outsourcing, then that, at that time, we will, the temporary people will evaluate where we are relative to staffing.
And Senator, I really have to add, you're questioning my competence when I have reports from Office of Inspector General commending what we're doing, and I have reports commending our efforts. So I believe this body, and I've been around 2 years, this body has been around a lot longer than me. So, I mean, I do have, the hospital does have independent audits that have recognized the efforts of this administration, and I think the competence speaks for itself.
Okay, so Alan, on the outsourcing, so the temporaries, I hear you, you're going to reevaluate whether they're needed or not. What about the existing office, the business office personnel?
You know, and that's a good question, Senator. That's something that's going to be evaluated as we move forward, but certainly we do not intend to adjust the staffing. It might be that people will be redeployed to different resources. For instance, you know, we have close to $180 million of self-pay. And one of the things that if one person was doing billing before for Medicaid and that's being done by somebody else outsourced, then at that point in time we might have them redeployed to a different area. But certainly for the first 6 months or however long it takes, we will be reconciling the receivables that are there. And so from a conversion standpoint, as you know, we have $264 million of receivables on the books or some number like that, but it's really close to maybe $60 million gross real receivables. And the board back in July did approve the motion to remove all of those receivables before we convert to NTT. Now, the 66 million or whatever that number is that's real receivables will be collected by GMH staff going forward. The outsourcing company, the third party, will start at zero and will be billing and building receivables from day one of their contract. So that's a goal. And so relative to the staffing, you know, we'll be working on reconciliation, cleanup, and then also follow up on all the outstanding receivables. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. On the accounts payable, what are you at now? I know we had a loan, or you received a refinancing structure, 25 million, but you only received about 12 million. So where do we stand with accounts payable? Can you repeat that?
I'm sorry, I apologize. We have about $14 million of payables. And certainly we are looking at how we can manage the cash flow in order to pay off valuable vendors, including local Guam vendors too.
Okay. Are we on credit hold with any local vendors? Or
I think we manage. We've set up relationships to ensure the payment of the payables in order to avert being on credit hold.
Okay. Senator, I think, I don't know the last time anyone has heard that GMH has been short critical items, and we've worked very hard to try to keep the list of critical vendors paid as much as possible, and especially to keep essential products like blood, medicine, and those types of products. Daily we review this, and we've worked very hard, and it's been a very long time since GMH has any major issues with basic medical care items.
Okay, and I know in this fiscal year, we're still, within the 14th fiscal year, there are provisions that give authorizations to the governor to be able to transfer funds to the hospital. So if that has not been exercised, I strongly suggest that's something that you guys take a look at. I believe it's over $1 million of authorization that is available to him to be able to provide the hospital.
How much did you say, Senator, was available?
Over 11 million.
Over 11 million?
Mm-hmm.
And we have been in contact with the governor, and we have been working with them, and they have been responsive to help us. So they have been helping us there, especially in the last month.
Okay, so go ahead.
This slide shows the payables as of yesterday because it's been important to you. And as Mr. Verga said, we are in communications with Adelup and DOA and BBMR to ensure that we get the funds to support the operations of GMH. In fact, we received $3 million last Thursday that allowed us to pay not only the payroll that was on Friday, it's about probably a $2.9 million payroll, but we were able to use the funds received from the commercial insurers to pay vendors, and they were very pleased to receive those payments. So we've made those payments up through yesterday, and we continue to make those payments. I should also mention that as we receive special funds, for instance, we received over $3 million from Medicare for settlements of 2012 and 2013. Those funds were immediately forwarded to vendors to pay down our liabilities. But as you can see, when we look at vendor payables and dietary vendors, over 60 days and over, that's approximately $5.4 million. And when Joe and I have talked to the vendors, we want to try and keep the accounts within 60 days. And so of concern to us is to not allow those payments to go stretch out, because we want the vendors to receive funds, and that's a conversation that we've had internally and also with Adelup and DOA and BBMR.
Yeah, and that $4 million that we've been seeing there is something that I've been also trying to work with you guys to see if we can work with the administration to kind of do an offset of that, of what is owed to the hospital. Just take this off your books.
Right, and let me just mention that, and we appreciate the legislature, your gaming tax revenues, and we have received funds for the urgent care, and we just yesterday received another check for, I'm trying to think, close to $300,000, of which 146 or 150,000 is going to be going for operations. So we're going to start making payments from that 150,000. So we appreciate certainly, once again, the legislature providing the gaming tax revenues, both towards urgent care and also towards operation, which we appreciate. Thank you.
So I guess that's a good segue into our next item, and the last item before we can open it up and just move forward is capital improvement projects, right? To include the urgent care. So if you can give us a briefing on that.
Sure. Maybe Belle, would you want to come up for a second, please? And then William and Gordon, come on up. Alan, maybe you could just be excused for a minute. If I need you, I'll call you back. As you know, Senator, we've always, and we said that we've anticipated urgent care to be operational in the last quarter of the first quarter of 2015 fiscal year, the last quarter of this calendar year. We are on track to do that. Belle will be overseeing operations at the urgent care. We've met several times, and as you know, putting together a we basically refining the staffing plan, policies, and procedures. I will tell you that, as you've noticed, the census, and I'm sure all of you see the headline at the PDN, for this past week, for the first time in a very long time, you've seen like 5 or 6 blue in a row. That's because of what we had to do. For several months before that, the hospital census was extremely high, with extremely lots of people waiting to get into the emergency room due to the public health backup. So we've had to use the area targeted for urgent care for ER overflow. Nonetheless, so it kind of pushed back the preparations we wanted to physically make there. But nonetheless, we are in the process of laying the groundwork to hire both clinicians, nurses, and we're going to use the hospital ancillary stuff. So we are on the track to open up urgent care before the end of this calendar year. And we're looking at the first time piloting 1 shift a day and then seeing how that works. So with that, maybe I'll ask Belle if she wants to just maybe describe what you're doing to the senator, to introduce yourself and let him know what we're doing to get urgent care ready.
Belle Rada, registered nurse of Guam Memorial Hospital Special Services Department. I was tasked to spearhead the clinical side of urgent care, which we plan to open hopefully by the first quarter of the fiscal year 2015. So what we're doing right now is to start to hire the clinical staff, ordering supplies, and maybe just checking the physical setup of where urgent care will be situated. We also plan to meet with the several heads of the hospital in order to get their ideas on how we would operate the urgent care like services, especially with emergency department. And what else? I think that's about it in a nutshell that we're starting to do with to start working on urgent care.
We already have 2 physicians, and we're looking at nurse practitioners also to work urgent care, which we don't use. We haven't used nurse practitioners traditionally at GMH, but they certainly are a lot more cost efficient. And so we're looking at doing that. We'll be using the ancillary services of the hospital as well. We are on track to do that as well. So that is going according to schedule, Senator.
Thank you. So I see you have Will here. If you can just brief us on the capital improvement project. I know one area that's been talked about a lot, even with this body, is the renovation of the L&D. And so there was different during the public hearing the Vice Speaker had on it. There was several numbers, and I saw briefly before I come in here you had issued a public statement about what is really needed, right? So I know that we haven't received. My office had requested a list of CIPs of the hospital that were ongoing, or what is in the what is the priority, what is needed. We haven't received that, so I'm still going to wait for that.
We have William has that here, and you can get it forthwith. I don't remember you specifically, but I'll make sure you get it.
Okay.
But as I regret missing the last hearing, but I submitted written testimony regarding the maternal child project that we would need a total of $7 million to complete the project, and that's what we will need. The second testimony I just submitted was just to reiterate the project and how much we needed again, and reinforce that we would need $7 million to complete the entire project. 4 would be enough, certainly, to get us started. William here has a total list of all the capital projects needed at GMH, and this is really our kind of overall plan that we review monthly and that we have. So right now we have about $14.5 million worth of funded capital improvement projects in the works at GMH. I believe we have, if I'm not mistaken, capital improvement projects were identified that are not funded, total about $43 million. And these are things that really have been, not been addressed for a very long time, and they need to be addressed. One of the things I did when I first got here was, and I submitted to all of you, was the development of a strategic plan, where item number 5 in that strategic plan, we have done or in the process of doing all 5. The last remaining item that I did put on there 2 years ago was really to really look at and assess the need for a new GMH. And I know that given in today's world, that's not one of the more popular subjects, but I know Speaker recently raised that item, and that's something that we identified 2 years ago as a necessity to really take a hard look at. But William could give you more of a global look, and I'll make sure that you get this entire plan on CIPs.
Thank you, Senators. My name is William Kando. I'm the hospital chief planner. And as Mr. Verga had mentioned, there are about $14.5 million worth of projects that are in progress. Most of that money has actually been spent, because most of that money went towards, a big portion of that, about $10 million, went towards the ED and CCU expansion, which, we're pretty much nearly complete on that project. The only thing that we're still working with the contractor to try to work through an issue that we've experienced with the ventilation system of the new ED site. So we're not letting them off the hook until we figure out how we're going to fix it. And so we've got the ED and CCU expansion nearly complete. We've completed approximately 95% of the procurement installation of computers for end users for the electronic health record. Dual fiber ring enterprise network upgrade project nearly done. The only thing holding that back is part of the EDCCU expansion was also the pharmacy upgrade, and so we're just waiting on countertops and cabinetries and a biological safety cabinet for the pharmacy upgrade to be completed. So we anticipate that being completed in October or maybe early November. Once we get towards that completion, we would have MIS Information Services come in and finish those computer and the user upgrades. So that's the only reason why we haven't finished those. We've got a vertical modernization of our vertical elevators project that's valued at about $500,000. And so out of the bond proceeds that we still have on the books of about $1.1 million out of about 10 or 11 million, we only have about 1.1 million left for general obligation bonds. That's really focused on the elevator modernization project, electrical distribution, designed for replacement of our electrical distribution system, and then those medical equipment purchases that have not come in yet for the ED and CCU and pharmacy expansion. So very little left on the bond proceeds. Even less left over from our compact impact federal funding, very little. We may have about $72,000 left on the books relative to compact impact. That money is going towards about 4 more NICU and NICU monitors that we've got coming in. We're working on finishing the repairs to our backup chiller system, emergency backup. Radiology department upgrade is in progress. So we anticipate being done with the fluoroscopy room number 2 first, and then the CT room. So the end of this month, and then early first half of October, we will be done with those 2 rooms. The last room would be the nuclear medicine room that we would be able to complete. We're working with the Volunteers Association in upgrading the telemetry unit. We're looking at enhancing all of the 26 patient rooms, and so that the volunteers are very excited about that project. So those are the things that we really have in progress. The huge list that's unfunded, up around 43 million. We've included the L&D. It's no longer. We've actually changed the name of that project. It's no longer called the L&D OB Ward Nursery Renovation Project. It's now called it's a lot shorter. It's now called the MCH Renovation Project, Maternal and Child Health, as requested by the nurses. And so we certainly want the nurses driving the direction of that project with the doctors. And so that's a very good thing. So that number, that 43 million, includes the 11 or 12 million dollars that's scheduled we're trying to pull together for that project.
And that 43 million is included in that list that you'll give us, right? In that list. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So just to, in the essence of time, just to move things forward. So we'll get that list, and if we need, we have other questions on that.
Send it today.
Yes.
Just one thing, the Z-Wing. I know we tried to see how you can get that moving with maybe some collaboration with the private sector in terms of assisting the hospital out of goodwill. Is that part of the list?
That is a part of the list as far as the intermediate and long-term fix of the Z-Wing. As far as working with maybe the Guam Contractors Association or whoever can work with us. We're picking the Guam Contractors Association first because we have a good relationship with them to look at the immediate any life safety concerns in the Z-Wing, that Z-Wing that we want to fix to make sure that the staff are not in harm's way. The intermediate and long term would be looking at how we're going to transition the staff out of that building, the physical staff and social services and the various staff that comprise that are in that building, put them in a better location of the hospital. If we're going to stay at the hospital, we're looking at potentially enclosing our middle and front courtyards, and so some of the space, in those areas, we could move the staff out, get to a point where we can actually demolish the Z-Wing and build anew if we are in fact going to stay in that footprint.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to open up to the panel here. If there's any speaker has gone. Vice Speaker, did you have any? Or Vice Chairman, did you have any? Vice Speaker?
The list that you have there of CIP projects. In the budget, Mr. Berger, that you submitted to the legislature on March 31st of this year, memory serves me right, you initially included in that budget about $14 million of CIP projects. Is that correct?
Approximately, Senator. I don't recall specifically, but it sounds right.
Okay, because what I'm trying to get to is, I noted at the, I think like page 6 of the budget, there's a notation that the Board of Directors struck $5 million from the CIP project. I do read the budgets that you send me.
Oh, I'm sure you do. I have no doubt, Senator. I don't really recall specifically them striking anything.
And there was a
specific.
board resolution reducing the CIP projects by $5 million.
I have to go back and look. I don't really recall. Does anybody recall the board reducing anything? I don't recall that, Senator. I'll have to go back and look.
Yeah, it's like on page 6 of your budget.
Okay, page 6. That's out of
But
what we submitted to you.
then I went through the entire budget that you submitted on March 31st of this year. When I went through that entire budget, the only thing that I could find for what you're now calling MCH for OB was maybe $200,000 worth of equipment. Nowhere in that budget transmitted to the legislature on March the 31st as the hospital's FY15 request includes or included any major renovation costs for MCH.
Senator, we also didn't include, as you heard me mention, $40 million worth of needs. We didn't include a lot on that list.
I understand, and what I'm trying to get to is, as the management and as the board, when you're submitting to the legislature, should you not include the priority items in your needs at the hospital so that we know? I mean, we don't know that you have 43.
I can give you the whole 43
No,
anytime.
I understand, but I'm trying to get to where there is a process. Your planner comes up with the numbers, 43 million. You decide of the 43 million which 10 or 15 are the first priority. You put it in the budget, and your board decides that no, you're not going to get all 15, you'll get 9 or 10. And they send it to us. Are we to take what your board tells us we should do, what you say we should do, or what Mr. Kando says we should do, or Dr. Shea says we should do?
Well, Senator, I really have to say I'm surprised because in all my experience here, or my short time here, I don't recall the board ever taking out any budget request that we submitted to it. So I really have to go back and look at where you're referring to the board took out anything, because I don't recall the board, and I don't think Mr. Ulrich does, recalls the board taking out anything that we submitted. The board approved the budget that we submitted as is, and I do have to go back and look at this because this is surprising to me. To my recollection, the board did not take out anything that we submitted.
Okay, I'll let the others ask, and I'll go get it.
Sure.
Mr. Vice Chairman, do you have anything? Speaker? Speaker, anything? Yeah, that's what. Okay, Senator Yamashita?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Gentlemen and ladies, thank you for being with us this afternoon. So you said $7 million for the MCH initiative, but then you said $11 million.
No, I don't know where 11 million comes from. I just submitted.
The gentleman just said.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes, so we look at the project as a total of actually $12 million. The money that's already approved for A&E, which is at about just shy of $900,000. The $7 million that we would need the loan to be at, plus the $4 million that we've submitted to the governor's office for FY16 compact impact. that total 12 million would give us the money that we're estimating we will need to do that project. Total of 12 million.
So in other words, what we're saying that we would need from this body is 7 million to complete the entire project, because 4 million we submitted to Compact Impact Capital Improvement needs through the governor's office. And so again, bringing, we have a graph that clearly shows the million almost, and the total price tag of 12 million. But what we're asking to include the entire project is 7 million, as I submitted with my first testimony and my written testimony and my second follow-up.
Thank you.
Senator Duenas? Okay, yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, gentlemen and staff, for being here. Before I ask my questions, I just wanted to thank you publicly on the record, most especially the staff at ER and ICU for the excellent care you gave to my late father. And so it was something I didn't want to have to see, but having seen it up front, it was an amazing demonstration of hard work. I'm going to ask 3 questions. I'll start with the beginning, because during time that I've spent with family over the last couple of months, several have approached me, and I'm wondering if all the discussions by Mr. Ulrich and the discussions of the collections issue is reflective of this. The aging on their billing, and they have the ability to pay, so they actually, 2 of them have approached the hospital to make payment for tax purposes and just ensuring that they get this done within this year. But the aging for all of that was 8 months and 6 and 5 months in terms of having not received a bill at all. Is that reflective of what we're seeing? Because they volunteered to come and talk to me about it, saying that they not only want to pay their bills, but and they know it would help. But I'm just asking, is that scenario reflective of what we have going on now, and the current contracts that you're entered into? Would that, or is that something that shouldn't be happening?
Well, I'll let Alan, I'll start and then Alan can jump in. But no, it's not typical, but we do have hiccups, and unfortunately, like every place else, we do have hiccups. Nothing's 100%, but that's not typical of what should be.
Okay. First of all, Senator, you have my condolences for the loss of your father. I'm sorry to hear that, and unfortunately, all the clinical work doesn't always keep our loved ones alive, so I'm really sorry for
the Lord has a different plan.
But nonetheless, to answer your question, we have been working diligently for the last year to ensure that the claims go out accurately on a timely basis. One of the things that we have a major problem with is getting documentation completed by our clinicians in order to get the claim out. As we talked earlier, we have a lot of claims that are that require paper documentation. Now, relative to your family's bills, I can't comment. If your parents had insurance coverage, the time that it takes to go through the paperwork and get the claim submitted goes to the insurance companies. And as you know, we have asked for a prompt payment from the insurance companies, but if they have 45 days to pay GMH, so we submit a claim, let's say 45 days after discharge, they can take 45 days, 60 days, they can deny it, etc. And then at that point in time, we receive the remittance, and then we have to, at that point in time, we'd say, is this patient share, or is there other claims related to it, like for the doctors, etc. So it's as Joe said, it's a very complex thing. So I can't answer 4 or 5 months, but certainly we are saying that right now, due to the inefficiencies, best said, for preparing a claim and the payment of it, that it can be easily 100 days before we see first payment on a claim.
Okay. Yeah, these were kind of specific. Their insurance had cleared them already, and so they were just wanting to pay their share to make sure that they got within the tax year. So.
And we are working on our staff to make sure that the limitations of our current system, unfortunately, keep us from transferring portion of the bill to patient responsibility, or in this case, your family responsibility, until all of the claims are processed. And that's what we'll be remedying and changing going forward.
Sure. Okay. Thanks. You know, the other two questions, Bill, I'm sorry, they do deal with the proposal on the urgent care and the CIPs. So if I
Okay,
can
thank you.
just go there now. So Joe, I just wanted to move to the two other questions that I had. One's probably going to be just a common sense question, and the other is on the overall CIPs. But the intention and the desire for the well-intended and the good urgent care model that you're moving to, is that designed to have an emergency intake where you would divert patients as you see fit to an urgent care setting, and not have that process go through ER, so that would make efficiency in the system and also take down the cost in terms of...
That's Senator Duenas, that's correct. What we envision is to have a different urgent care tract. So in other words, a patient would come into the emergency room, come to the triage, get triaged, and be triaged by the nurse immediately to make it determine whether they're category 1s or 2s, and you go this way, and to keep them, any categories 3s or above are classified as emergencies. No, you come this way, you go to emergency room. So the intent is to keep those folks away from the emergency room so the emergency physicians could concentrate just on emergencies, hopefully alleviating, again, those crowds. The true emergencies are those, categories 3s, people that need monitors, cardiac problems, things of that nature. But that's the intent, the simple colds, the coughs, the prescription refills that we see. We see that operating as almost a public health clinic for all intents and purposes.
I saw it when I was there.
Yeah, and by the way, I want to really thank you for your kind comments to the staff. And once again, our condolences for your dad. And I know it was a very painful experience. And I went up and I saw you, and I saw your dad there. And I really appreciate your kind comments about seeing the hospital workings from the inside with a loved one, because all that we do, that's the bottom line. For what we do, and so I thank you for that.
Absolutely. Gordon, maybe you got this one, or William has to come back up. And I'm sure the investment that we're making right now on the major CRPs that are going in are to meet the current needs of what, as Dr. Shea and other people have put it, what is proper for the level of care, in the world we live in today, and the first world that we are in. My question, maybe Gordon, you got this one. After some of these other ones that are online, doesn't it make sense to do because I know Bill said a couple times, if we're at that location, or if that's the case, and there's been bantered or, discussed here now about a possible new facility, is there a plan to do an overall, feasibility study for that 40-some million? That's a lot of money, and even the new hospital took 8 years, I think, in the planning to probably when they're going to be complete. Would it make sense to do one soon, a feasibility study, whether it would be worth going beyond the current CIPs and know that plan before we? Because I think at some point we're going to have to do a more comprehensive approach to this. So that's just a basic question.
My name is Gordon Mizuzawa. I'm the Associate Administrator of Operations. In regards to your question, I would say that the leadership of GMH annually reviews all of our projects to include all the CIPs. We just went through that review with our CEO, and we presented our current priorities to the board for the board approval. We do this every year. Because we've got so many mouse turds against us right now, it's difficult to look farther out, 3 to 5 years, because we try to operate as best as we can every day. The challenges we have are every day. So it's difficult for management to focus on other priorities because patient safety and patient care is our major priority. Sure. It may be that, and then we talk readily with both the CEO and the CFO, so we're in tune as to what's going on. But As an example, we were at 110, 120% occupancy for a stretch of 9 weeks. Okay, when you've got 58 beds and you got count from 185 to 205 patients at the ER or at the hospital, the priorities has to change.
Sure.
Senator, if I may, and William can answer with more specifics, I understand that, and this precedes me, there's been several master plans. In fact, I believe the former governor had a 5-year plan to move the mental health, GMH, and public health into a brand new facility. That plan never materialized, from what I understand. And then there was another master plan that called for a $94 million or $92 million women's facility, I believe, down in Tumon. So that was another plan, and this coincided with the buildup, and that was another plan that never materialized. So there's been several plans out in Gov Guam, which has never materialized, and I think that it really is time to sit down and look at the master facilities plan for healthcare moving forward into the future. And if William says, as we're going to say, that we still have to operate the hospital, we still have to meet the needs of the patients, we still have to comply with accreditation needs, and so these ongoing capital improvements that we're talking about are needed to keep the hospital operational. I mean, as you said, a new facility, I think even building in 2 or 3 years would be very optimistic. But in the meantime, these things are all these things are really badly needed for the hospital. They've been neglected for a very long time.
Sure, and just in a closing follow-up, I understand where Gordon's coming from, and so the bottom line is that perhaps what we're talking about too is a more balanced discussion once the load comes down, when the facility comes online and the bed space. But I just think when we're talking in the 40s, 50s, and stuff like that, that we maybe need to come back to the table and do a reevaluation on the feasibility and what market exists to be able to discuss that type of more further capital improvement. So even if it was a 10-year out, it's probably worth still talking about. But I appreciate your efforts, and thanks for answering my questions.
Thank you, Senator. Vice Speaker?
Thank you. I'm glad Gordon has a copy of the budget. And just so it's not said that I was the one that altered anything, on the second, I think it's third page, in the summary, the third page in the summary, where it says capital outlay, the bottom. Well, there are 2 pages, C58. Would you hand this to him? I assure you I was not the one that altered this. And so,
I never accused you of that, Senator.
though you may not have seen it, I did not alter it. So if you can find it on your page to confirm that this is a copy. Yes, that is your budget, Gordon. And one of your doctors, when I had lunch with him last week, remembered that motion at the board meeting where that $5 million was taken out.
Was that ever part of our budget submission? Did that come from our office?
I'd have to look at that. I don't remember that.
Can you find it in your copy, Gordon, or do you want me to look for it? Capital outlay. It's the same thing, right? So you can confirm that I didn't alter that.
No, I found it.
Thank you.
It says reduced capital outlay of trustees' action.
5 million.
5 million, 5.7 million.
I think, Vice Speaker, I'll have to look back at my notes from that. But as William and Gordon commented earlier, we had capital requests of $12 million or so for fiscal 2015.
I understand.
Excuse me, can I complete, please? Thank you.
Go ahead.
Thank you. And Mr. Berga and the board, working with the board, we are very, very intent on having a balanced budget. So we had a certain amount of funds available. And if we reduce the actual capital requests by this $5 million, I would have to look at that. But certainly, between the board meeting in March, or I think it was in February we did it, and what was submitted on March 31st, we might have just said our total expenditures were $143 million. And in order to match revenues and expenses to have a balanced budget, we could not honor all of the capital requests. Capital requests can be a wish list. And so if there were 12 million, we might have ended up at X million.
I understand that, Mr.
Thank you.
Ulrich, and the point that I am trying to make is this was your budget submittal to the Guam legislature for this upcoming budget year that starts in 2 weeks, correct? And because I suffered through going through every single page of this to write down every capital outlay to get to the $9 million that was left over, so I could write down what those were. Would you go through them and make a list, and when you're finished, send to me where and how much you've included in this budget that you submitted this March for this upcoming fiscal year, there's any money in for MCH, except for a few breathing machines for the babies.
Senator, I found what you're looking for. Between March and the end of July, when the legislature approves budgets, things change. Priorities change. And we came here also in July and asked for several things in our budget that were not approved as well. So, I mean, things do change, Senator.
And in your testimony, where did you place MCH in the list of priorities?
MCH is a much-needed project,
Just
like many other priorities.
In your statement,
Which statement?
the statement that you gave to the to us on
Right.
on July the 25th, you read a whole statement, which was then publicized by Ms. Paris. You had your top 5 priorities, and in it, you went on and gloated about the fact that you wanted to do.
Senator, I don't gloat about anything, excuse me, and I take
transplants.
exception to it.
You wanted to do hip implants or whatever, something or other. But I went through those 5 and I didn't find MCH. Then I went through the whole speech. Of the 17 priorities, $2 million request for labor and delivery was the very last item. And I'm sure if you pull up your statement, if you don't have it, I will provide it for you again.
No, I believe that what you're saying, but again, that was a very preliminary estimate, and that was when the concept was even initially being discussed and the need really being pushed. We have many needs at the hospital, Senator, that have been neglected for many, many years. And if you're telling me there are higher priorities than mothers and babies, if that's what you're telling me...
No, I am not.
then,
I am saying
you know,
that's what you said.
No, I didn't say that.
Look at your statement. Ask June to provide it for you because she publicized it. There were 17. And it was the very
And you're saying
last thing
I asked for
that
$2 million for the project?
Yes.
And so I'm telling you that changed. That was an initial estimate. You're telling me I didn't even say anything about the project.
No.
If it was there, I mean, it was clearly there. But I don't understand where we're going with this. Again, that was a very preliminary estimate. And that was even when we were talking conceptually about the project. So, you know,
So
again, I
what
don't...
has changed since then that gives you now the number 7?
Because we sat down and I had professional engineers and people who've been doing this work for many years actually make an assessment that back in June we hadn't finished and completed at that time. That was just a very preliminary guesstimate at that time, and that was never intended to be a final number.
Thank you, Senator Nicholas. Just and if we could, we have the speaker and also Senator Morrison, who may have a comment or question, but we are against time, so we can just keep it brief.
Thank you, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
We'll have the speaker. She has just a quick question.
Thank you very much. I have, I guess this document, this sheet came right out of the GMHA CIP executive summary, and I don't know why it says confidential, but it's page 1 of 2. And in this sheet, it says that there are projects, of course, I think there are 9 altogether, that's totaling $14.5 million. And in that list, of course, number 8 was GMH had received an RFP qualifications proposal from professional A&E design firms, as GMH is seeking the most qualified offer to complete the assessments. And it's for renovations for GMH L&D OB Ward Nursery Renovation Project. And then further down, then it has unfunded CIPs planned for the future, and it's for $43 million. And again, L&D OB Ward Nursery renovation was listed. So my question is that when the A&E was done for now what you call MCH, what funds were used to pay for this? And you had mentioned earlier about $900,000 was used for this.
Senator, my name is Gordon Mizuzawa. Your Public Law 32-179, which appropriated the initial $895,813, is the portion that is being utilized for the architectural and engineering.
So, and how soon was this done? Because that legislation is not too old.
We issued the RFP about 3 weeks ago. The submission occurred last week, Friday. We had our first meeting on the evaluation team yesterday. Yeah, we have 6 submissions for A&E. Okay, we will start. There's 5 evaluation personnel on the committee. We will finish our, including nursing, right? Basically, you've got 5 individuals that's evaluators, including myself. We have 1 week to do our evaluations and submit our recommendations. We're hoping that within 3 or 4 weeks, we will determine the scale from 1 to 6, and we will negotiate with the number 1 team.
Okay, so then that will, when this happens, then that will reduce your $43 million of unfunded CIPs.
That is correct. Let me mention one other thing in regards to also BJ Cruz. When we submitted our budget of $142 million, the vision of L&D wasn't even matured yet, okay? This has happened in the last, I'd say, 90 days, okay? All the things that we propose and the cost that we've done with planning, with our facilities, have occurred within the last 8 weeks. In fact, last 6 weeks, okay? All the monies that we proposed, and we've had inspections at Naval Hospital, we which has an LRP. We've done all this, over the last 90 days. But this is our estimates, and we can submit to all of you what the proposal is. And the proposal is $1 million, which we're using for the NE, the $7 million, right, which is part of the L&D, right, plus the $4 million in regards to our DOI request for 2016. That is the $12 million. We can, with his authorization, I can really give you copies of this today, actually. Because it says the same thing. It's 1, 7, and 4. $12 million, okay? This does not materially affect our financial statement or our budget, because all the funds are coming externally. Okay, none of that is coming from GMH requested funds. So it would not materially change the capital requirements, I think, in our budget, because this is completely separate.
And I'm glad to hear you say that,
Okay.
because it was reported out in the media
Right.
that the hospital was going to pay for this, and the bill, if you read it
No,
very
it's-
carefully,
it's
did not
completely
say that
different.
at all.
All of you deserve all the credit.
The credit is
Right.
not what I
No,
think
but-
we're
but-
looking for. We just want to make sure that we don't want anyone to feel threatened at the hospital, that by going out to get the monies to do this, that it's going to come from the hospital.
No, and
When
it's
the
not.
government allows for, authorizes for any borrowing, it's always on the government's back, basically, in terms of identifying a funding source to
Right.
be able, for this to go through. If there's no funding source, then, of
not gonna
course,
happen.
it's not going to happen.
That is correct.
And surely you don't have the funds,
Right.
to pay for this for either 10 years or 20 years.
Senator, the other thing is, and just like reading your intended bill, it stipulates exactly what the interests are and who's going to pay the debt. And who's going to pay the debt, okay? Initially, when our CEO looked at it, he was concerned about accumulating more debt. But in your proposal, on your plan, it shows that although we're increasing by $4 million, right, it's not our debt. Okay? It shows the guarantee. It shows the repayment. The only difference is today we understand that there may be some change on the amortization.
Yes,
Okay.
and
Right.
because the numbers, had changed. I know initially they were
Right.
saying 5 million, the initial deposit of real cash of $995,000,
Right, right.
actually, which you use now for the A&E. Then there's the 4 million to be borrowed.
Right.
And we've identified, at least in the bill, of course, $600,000 as the debt service for that. And initially it was for 10 years for a short-term loan.
Loan, right.
But because now the numbers have moved up to $7 million, we went back and did some amortization to see then how much would $600,000 yield. And of course, depending on the interest rates, anywhere between $7, to $7.4 million
Right.
could be. But we have to increase now the years from 10
To 20.
to 20 years.
I understand that. And we haven't received anything or that information right now. However, your bill also stipulates that upon funding of this loan, right, all the funds goes into a loan in process account. No interest is charged until disbursements are made. Okay, so it kind of gets back to Senator San Nicolas's concern on getting the funding amount too early and being paid. There's no points, there's no fees, etc. on this loan. Everything is stipulated under your bill, right? So I think that answers all the questions, not only for the Senate side, but for GMH. But it does not affect this budget.
You're right, it does not. And
It
if you
does not.
also notice is
That
that
is correct.
alternate types of financing, of course, may be possible. And one of the items that's listed is to actually seek monies, because October 1 is coming out for USDA grants, and I actually met with a federal official that came out here about 2 weeks ago, that these are projects that they love to do, and they would have new funding sources starting October 1st, which again, the interest rates will be much lower, yielding again additional monies, which you can probably use for equipment. So, but the concern I have, though, and you see, and that's what I want to find out, that an amendment can be made, of course, to increase that amount. However, you're saying you want an additional, or you're requesting from the governor's office an additional $4 million from compact impact monies, and I understand, yes, that the governor has full control in deciding how those monies are to be used for, not the legislature. But do you have any assurance, though, that you're going to get the $4 million so that you'll be able to complete the project? That's important to know, because if you're not, you don't have that assurance, then you're going to be left only with 2 phases, of the work being done for MCH.
I haven't received any, quote, assurances, but I have received, the governor is supporting this project, and the governor is submitting our request for the capital improvement funds. These funds are approved for the purposes the governor identifies 99% of the time. So I mean, those are pretty good odds. And the governor is supporting the project. So which is the reason why we took advantage of submitting a request for additional funds through that mechanism instead of coming to this body for more money.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Senator Nicholas and Senator Morrison.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us today. I just wanted to talk about the next fiscal year and my concerns about the cash flow. The agency, the hospital, is dependent heavily on the Healthy Futures Fund, similar to public health and similar to Guam Behavioral Health and Wellness. And I wanted to ask over this current fiscal year, the prior 12 months, compared to the appropriation and the actual amount of cash received, how much has GMH actually received versus what was appropriated?
Senator, GMH has received all of the dollars that were appropriated for 2014.
All of the money from the Healthy Futures Fund that was appropriated via the Healthy
That's the, I believe that was $2.9 million, I believe. I'm speaking from memory. I'd have to look at the specifics. But whatever Healthy Futures funds that were in the original appropriations, not Section 6, but everything else, all the other funds have been received.
So GMH has received all of their appropriations?
We have received all appropriations that were defined specifically in new bill in the approved fiscal 2014 budget, with the only exception being the $11 million that we had talked about previously in July.
So GMH has not received $11 million of what was appropriated?
That was defined by the legislature as far as use of funds, and we are working right now with Adelup to reconcile what those funds are. But we are under understanding that that particular appropriation line item was not funded or appropriated, and we're actually working with Adelup to reconcile that and find additional resources, if you will.
What is this particular line item that you're referring to then?
I believe in Section 6 is, I'd have to look at the actual bill to provide you that information.
So what you're telling the committee then is that that $11 million is not coming to GMH because it wasn't properly appropriated? Is that what you're saying? I'm trying to figure out because,
we're not saying that. We're just saying that there's the discrepancy continues to exist, which is why we're working with DOA to try to understand why that $11 million line item, was not is not coming to GMH or did not come to GMH, or was it discretionary spending or was it not? And that's where the discrepancy is coming in. We've received all the appropriations specified. The one point of discrepancy involves that, and that's what we continue to sit and discuss and reconcile with DOA. And to this day, we're still reconciling that.
And what is the supposed source of funds for this $11 million? Is it general fund money that hasn't been remitted?
I'm not sure what the source is. It was strictly in the 2014 appropriations budget for GMH, and I think the line item that you're referring to, which is it, Alan?
I believe it was not specified as a source of funding in the actual final bill for 2014, and that's why we're trying to, because it was the dollars were identified, but the sourcing of the funds were not identified, and that's why we're trying to reconcile that right now with Adelup and DOA.
It appears that in the appropriation there were transfer funds up to 11 million, but it was never actually, the source was never identified and the actual money never really appropriated. It appears that way, but when you look at the budget, it looks like it's in the budget and it's actual funds in the budget. So that's where that was the item of discrepancy, and please take a look at the item we're referring to. I'm not sure if that money was actually appropriated or not, but that's what we're trying to sort out with DOA. And to us, we interpreted that as meaning that money was supposed to come to us, and that's what we're still trying to clean up with DOA.
See, this is where I get I become very disturbed, because I know that tax credits have been claimed against the Healthy Futures Fund, but you're saying that GMH has not had any shortfalls from this particular fund.
Senator, with all respect, I don't know whether it's Healthy Futures or what other source of funding that we're talking about. So I'd have to actually look at the bill and look at whatever sourcing was found in the final bill.
Okay, because the source of funds that GMH is supposed to receive from the government is actually very, very important, because that's how we here as policymakers can help to affect that. Several times during the budget process, I attempted to make an amendment to prevent tax credits from being applied to the hospital, so that they couldn't redeem tax credits against the budget that we're appropriating for you guys. And so if I'm going to be moving forward with a separate bill in order to insulate the hospital from tax credits, I need to be fairly certain that actually is the claiming of tax credits against the budget of GMH is in fact causing harm. I'm fairly certain it is, because I know that the revenue projections for the Healthy Futures Fund that was anticipated for 2014 didn't come in at the levels that were projected. And that basically tells us in the legislature that something offset those revenues, and a lot of those offsets we are believing to be tax credits that were claimed against it. So if the Healthy Futures Fund is getting reduced because of these tax credits, and the hospitalist is taking a hit because he's not getting the actual dollars and cents it's supposed to because of these tax credits, there are things we can do, and I'm very interested in actually introducing legislation to insulate education and health from tax credits eroding your budgets. But we need the facts to support it if we're going to move that forward. I would very much like to help the hospital that way, but the hospital needs to communicate to us that that is in fact a problem.
Well, I think now you can get some of the information that he's looking for.
And certainly appreciate the senators and the legislature supporting the hospital. And once again, we've had several meetings with DOA and BBMR and the governor's office relative to the funds available as for the hospital, to support the hospital. Thank you.
And relative to cleaning off what we owe rev and tax, do we just communicate that to rev and tax, or request the rev and tax, or does that go through your committee, or does that come to the legislature?
I would suggest that you communicate that with the administration. They may be able to do a memorandum of understanding between your two agencies. If the administration is unwilling to do an MOU, please come to my office and we can see what we can legislate. But because that's at an executive branch level, I don't see why that can't be reconciled at that point.
Okay.
Yeah, that'll be the fastest way too. Okay. My second question during the course of the discussion was that it was mentioned that you guys haven't fully reconciled the amount you're supposed to receive from public health to the tune of about 25 million.
Senator, yes. Now, you have to understand that GMH's accounts receivable have continued to mount and haven't always been reconciled. So when I look at the accounts receivable and you look at the detail, I have things going back 15 years. And it's, the possibility, the probability of collecting that is low. So in the July Board of Trustees meeting, they did authorize a motion for us to reduce $184 million of receivables that are past timely filing or uncollectible. So that's the goal. Now, relative to the $24 million that we show on the books, I have not worked with our business office staff yet to identify all of the claims that are still hanging around that should be written off. But nonetheless, as I mentioned earlier in my testimony, there are two initiatives that we're working on. One on the electronic 276-277 interface for all claims filed from 2011 forward, and the other part is the manual reconciliation. We started the reconciliation process for the first time last September, and because of year-end and other things happening, we didn't complete it. So the goal is to work on these two initiatives to find out what that real number is. Certainly, $25 million gross might not be correct. What that real number is, I don't know. And once again, it's gross claims, gross receivables with contractuals. Coming back to your previous comment, Vice Speaker, we're getting probably 50 cents on the dollar for our inpatient and 72 cents on our charges for outpatient. So once again, gross claims will be reduced to net realizable, but whether they're net realizable as far as collection, that's a different, another separate analysis and reconciliation we have to do.
I understand. The reason why I'm asking is because, not too long ago we went into session and GMH came and supported a bill to take from the GMH trust fund the $8 million and give it to public health for Medicaid in order, with the hopes of getting some of it back from Medicaid reimbursements. Now, my concern with what you're sharing with me now is that if we haven't even fully reconciled with public health what they owe, why do we give GMH's money to public health again and hope that they're going to give the money back through Medicaid when we haven't even reconciled what they owed prior to that? And my follow-up question to that also is, of that $8 million that we've handed over to public health now, how much has the hospital gotten back?
We had that conversation yesterday and today with BBMR in the governor's office and DOA. It is our understanding that of the $8 million that received the federal match also, that of those funds, $2.8 million was paid to GMH, and the balance, I believe, has been paid to other Guam providers. So we have, the original bill did not stipulate that all of those funds were going to GMH, and it was given to public health for their operations. So from the conversation I had yesterday, I believe that $2.8 million was received. We actually received $3.8 million from public health in August, but how much of that's from one fund versus the other, I can't comment on.
So just for the record then, for this hearing, I did introduce an amendment to try and keep all that $8 million to go return back to GMH, and that didn't pass. But the larger concern here is that GMH, which is a going concern, which hasn't reconciled with public health what is owed from public health, has handed over $8 million of its trust fund money and has only gotten $3.8 million of it back.
That we, as I said, it was $2.8 million, but we did receive $3.8 million in the month of August, and we're in the process of reconciling it, but that is correct. You know, and then once again, the $8 million was taken from the trust and became eligible for the federal match on top of that. But of that, based on claims, et cetera, that we had submitted or that they had processed, we received 2.8 or 3.8 million from those funds.
Yeah, and
Senator, for the record, I did support you. I'm very supportive of your amendment for that entire money to come back to us. It's unfortunate that it was not specified that it was all coming back to
and this is one of the things, too, that I would like to request you guys really hammer, or not hammer, that's the wrong word, really be very assertive with the administration that from a one government perspective, especially if the hospital needing money, when you guys take the initiative to provide $8 million of your own money into a program within this government, that you should at least get every dollar back, if not a return, so that you can help your own financial position. Because, I mean, that was the intent. I'm sure that was the intent when you guys walked into the whole agreement. But now to find out that you haven't even gotten 50 cents on the dollar back of your own trust fund, I mean, it's really alarming, especially given the current financial situation of the hospital.
We appreciate
I think I'm going to stop this. You know, this is something that we've discussed on the session floor, and this is an initiative that has gone through the body. And, you know, we can sit here and discuss this, but to say that $8 million was all supposed to be for GMH was wrong. The intent there was to get it out there for the general, if you look at the healthcare in general. And so we'll just move on now. Senator Morrison?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No, time's running short. I know at this point in time we're going to an exercise with the annual report of the compact, and that is due before January 1st. Do you have a figure at this time, the actual impact?
I'm sorry, I don't know which report you're talking about for January 1st.
Well, every year the Bureau of Statistics and Plans provides a report to the governor on the actual impact of the hospital. That goes built into the compact impact as far as the cost to provide services for our...
I'm not familiar with that. I can ask Mr. Kando to come up because he's the one who's previously prepared documentation relative to the services under compact impact.
Good afternoon. Yes, we typically work very closely with the Information Services Department. Has actually been compiling that information every year for the last, I would say, at least the last 5 years, maybe 5 to 10 years. I believe this past year, they reported approximately somewhere between $18 to $20 million was the cost of the freely associated states being provided services at GMHA. We can get you the information. I believe we're in the process of working on this year's report coming up to provide this past year's information, and we can certainly share that information with you.
Okay. Mr. Chair, I just point to that question because obviously it's a continuing concern of the compact. I know the annual impact continues to grow. I think it's around roughly 140 or 150 at this time, annual impact to our island. But I know a big portion of that is doing part of GMH. I appreciate the efforts. I know that you've been pointing out and outlining some of the efforts being made with the collection agencies and all these efforts to generate revenue or make things a lot more efficient in collecting the revenues that are or monies that are due to the hospital. But I'm still trying to figure out, even with all that in place today, even if it was in place today, and I know, Mr. Berger, you brought this up, that you stated that there's some unpopular decisions that possibly could have to be discussed about what's going on with the hospital. And with all this in place, I don't even see we're even going to come close to breaking even with the hospital or coming close to making ends meet. And I know it's challenging, and you're doing everything you can within your expertise to make things work up there. I just want to ask the question, has discussions being brought up with the board on any other options on the table that, aside from these capital outlay projects that are looked at to help spruce up the hospital, at the end of the day are we looking at something that is going to allow for this hospital to get out of this continuous repetitive cycle of being short on its revenues? I'm just wanting to put that out there. Is there anything being discussed that's bigger than what we're talking about here?
Yes, Senator, there is. And the biggest centerpiece of our financial strategy at the hospital to put the hospital on financial ground involves a TEFRA rate rebase from Washington. We have been working long and hard on this project, and for the first time in history, CMS is being not only very receptive, but is actually accepted our application. They just asked for us for some additional data. They've agreed not only to look at our TEFRA rate and not only the rate itself, but adjustments from 2013, opening the books back to 2007. We are working right now in 2013 with our Washington consultants, and we just submitted the last bit of data that they were looking for. This has been a tremendous work and undertaking in progress. We're anticipating that an adjustment could possibly net the hospital between $3 and $3.5 million per year, besides the rebase itself. So starting with 2013, CMS has, because of the confidence that they have in what we're doing at the hospital, agreed to open the books back to 2007. This is the centerpiece of our strategy. If we're successful with this rebase, then the local MIP and Medicaid programs will have to match what they do. And this has been a centerpiece of our strategy all along, to make sure that the hospital is adequately reimbursed for the services we're providing. Medicare has acknowledged that all the data we submitted and the initiatives we have in progress, they have the confidence that we're managing the business aspect a lot more efficiently, and what we're doing is that they have more confidence in the management of the funds, which is why they're much more they've been receptive. Before, they never even would accept the application. So I'm expecting in the next, hopefully within the next month, some word whether or not our first request for adjustment has actually been approved or not. And then, in fact, Alan, you are submitting data now going back from 2007, recently payroll data, patient volume data. There is a tremendous amount of data that we have gone back and reconstructed. So we've worked very hard on this, and this being the biggest centerpiece of our financial strategy to bring additional funds into GMH that are not based on local funding.
Can I add to that, please?
Yes.
Thank you. I just want to clarify and allow me to use my hands. Our costs are here for Medicare. I'm sorry, our costs are here, our reimbursement is here. right now Medicare gives us a relief of 50% of that difference. So when Joe talks about the 3.5, we're talking about the remaining uncompensated, unreimbursed relief. Now, public health only pays us this. They don't come forward with the 50% relief that we get from Medicare. So when we talk about the cost to Medicaid and MIP, and in the correspondence when we presented the budget, we said that we have a potential cost not only for 2013, but also for 2014 to get Medicaid, who must follow Medicare's reimbursement, to go from cost, with the reimbursement now, to cost. If Medicare does it, Medicaid and MIP must do it too. So it could be more than the $3.5 million for 1 year, and we have 13 and 14, but also, as Joe mentions, going back to 2007. So really, as Joe points out, this whole tougher rebasing is going to provide accurate cost reimbursement from Medicare if it's accepted. And then there's going to be implications for Guam and public health that they have to follow. But really, once again, we have 4 strategies for our reimbursement. Medicare going to cost reimbursement, public health going to cost reimbursement. We're negotiating contracts with the commercial insurance to have them pay their fair share of what the costs are and the services at GMH. And the fourth is, as we presented in our budget, is that we need something to cover the $30 million of unreimbursed care, the self-pay care that Mr. Kando mentioned. If it's $18 million for freely associated states, or it's $30 million for self and uninsured, we don't get anything. We did not receive the compact impact funds we received in 2013. We received $6 million last year. Yes, we did get money to secure the loan. Yes, we did get money to pay off Perry Point. But once again, we have a $30 million burden for self-pay that we really need. That's the fourth leg of the structure, the financing that we need. And we appreciate your support and also the governor's support to ensure that GMH has the adequate funds to pay its staff, pay its vendors, and ensure the quality and safety that you need. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for discussing that more further in detail. Last question, Mr. Chair. I know you brought this up earlier about the collections and billing section. I know there's a process that's taking place right now to address that. And you discussed earlier that the personnel there will be redirected to other areas that are needed. Has that been conveyed to the staff regarding the collections agency, that division that you're outsourcing?
Actually, clarification. Once again, we have staff who are going to be devoted to clean up and close off, if you will, of all of our existing receivables. We've also, and you mentioned collections. So once again, collections is different than the coding and billing that we're talking about. So we're talking about that process. And Mr. Verga did talk to the staff while I was absent about these plans. And once again, we have not moved forward with any conversations or any plans pending finalization of the negotiations.
Okay, I'm just being open, you guys. That's what's
fine.
been brought to our table and
No,
discussed.
none of these RFPs are going to affect staff. What it will affect, it will allow us to eliminate vacancies. And so I explained that to the staff, and that's part of the plan. It was never, staff will be unaffected by the actual outsourcing.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you very
Chair.
much. Mr. Vice Speaker, do you have a follow-up?
Yeah, just actually on something else that Joe just brought up about CMS. I understand CMS is on island?
Yes. In fact, I may have to go to an exit, so if I have to excuse, that's why I keep looking at mine.
Oh, okay.
They're at the SNU as we speak.
Oh, they're reviewing the SNU?
Yes, they in fact, they came to the lab at GMH on Tuesday. In fact, the lab did very well. Didn't get no major citations. There were no immediate threats to life. Just received a few minor standards. But there was a full team at the SMU. 4 surveyors since Tuesday. It's now Thursday. I don't know if they're ending tonight or they're ending tomorrow. I'm waiting to hear from them. I said they don't tell you until about an hour before. So they are at. They've been on island for about a week now, but they are at the SNU as we are speaking.
Thank you, because I was wondering whether or not the chairman was going to be invited to sit in on the exit
Sure,
interviews.
we always do. In fact, you'd be invited too, Mr. Speaker. I'd love to have you all come.
Well, I wasn't going to invite myself, but I thought I should.
But you are invited. I'm inviting
chairman.
you.
Thank you. And yes, and they did extend that invitation when the lab survey was completed.
And for SNU as well,
That's
Senator.
right.
I'm waiting to hear because I
Sure.
don't know when the
Sure.
exit.
And
But I
that's
want
why
you to
we-
know. I'll text you as soon as
And
I
that's
do.
why we
And I'll
had,
text you too, Senator.
we had deferred discussion on SNU until after.
Right.
Okay, so we'll wrap it up, but the speaker has one quick follow-up.
Thank you. I wasn't sure when you had mentioned $18 million of services provided to FSM citizens. Did you mention that? Or Mr.
For
Cando?
Candos.
Oh, you're right. Is that the amount to date going as far back to the present time? Do you have those numbers by year and what state, basically, the federal
Yes, ma'am.
states?
We have it broken down by state. That number that I can't remember the exact number. That's why I threw out a
It's
range
okay.
of
Just
18 to 20 million.
Can we get
And
a
that was just
copy?
for one fiscal year. That was for, I believe,
Okay.
FY13, if I'm not
But
mistaken.
can you go further back?
Yes,
Further
ma'am.
years, and you have?
I don't know about 30 years.
No, I mean further back.
We can go back. We have a very good, our information services department put together a very nice matrix, and we can provide that
At least from
at
the
least 5 years
beginnings
back.
of the compact. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
That's important if we can get that number, if we can provide it to the chairman, because I'm working with the chairman on something. The other thing I didn't clarify, but originally in the document that I read, with the 13.5 and the 43 million is $56.5 million. Would that then be the total cost or comprehensive renovation that needs to happen at the hospital? Or is that just only some of, like you said, your wish list?
That's,
Or any one of you three?
yes, ma'am. I would consider that a very substantial, not just renovation, but I mean, a lot of these are systems that are beyond their useful life. They do not manufacture replacement parts for these systems anymore. So as the systems start to break down and degrade, now you have what used to be a 100% system. A nurse call system may only be functional at 75%, and it just continues to get worse and worse.
But I mean, of course, other than having to go in and build a new hospital, what then will be the master plan for the hospital? You know, we just did something very similarly right now for DOE. And of course, we have the Army Corps of Engineers saying, you know, it's going to cost $90 million. But we have now put into legislation that we need for them to get the accurate number. If that is to be done for the hospital, or do you have an idea, what then would that cost be?
Yes, ma'am. If we're not going to be able to get the money for a new hospital, we have a feasibility study that was done by a professional engineer that shows that we do have the ability to expand further at GMH. There are areas, our C wing could be expanded. We could put a third floor above our OR L&D area. We could put a third floor up there. If we were to need to expand our telemetry unit, for example, if we were going to finally be able to demolish and rebuild the Z wing, and then also fill in our front and middle courtyards. That 43 million contains a lot of that, but not everything. Not everything. We did not include, for example, the floor that would go above the OR L&D area. So, I mean, if we're going to have to stay in place, 43 million is not going to, that would not cover it in its entirety. But 43 million is our focus with that 43 million is what we need to sustain our operations, to remove and replace those critical systems that are going to allow us to continue to operate with our existing structure. As far as further expanding right now, of course, we want to see what the impact's going to be with the opening of the new hospital, the private hospital. Do we need to build additional? We don't know yet. And so we don't want to be wasteful. We want to see what's going to happen there.
Okay, thank you.
Again, thank you very much to you. There's another hearing that also is to deal with GMH right after this. So it's 2:46, and this hearing's adjourned. Thank you.